What's up, guys? Toad, right back with you again after last night's college football show. Got a nice win in college football last night to have a 3-2 day yesterday. One thing I forgot to mention, the basketball loss yesterday, St. Joe's. I don't know what happened in that game because that was a spot where, I did mention this part of it, but that was a spot where St. Joe's, I got it at 14 and a half. It was 17 when it closed, so I beat the closing number. They were in a spot where they hadn't played well in their previous games. They were in kind of a refocus spot. Central Connecticut was in a letdown spot or hangover spot after playing a ridiculous tough game against a Big East team. And I was thinking it was going to be a clash in styles where you have St. Joe's, who's a very fast team, Central Connecticut, very, very slow team. Usually the home team, especially if they're the significantly better team, they win out in that contrast of style. So that's what I thought would happen in that game, and that did not happen at all. So that game lost. Hofstra was a win. I think most of the college basketball leans I gave out for yesterday's games actually were correct as well, which unfortunately I did not bet those other ones, but I think I got most of them right. So one of the ones that I thought was the strongest and actually bet wound up being a loser. Never fun. NBA was 1-1. Like I said, Houston, once that got into the second quarter, that one was dead. Cleveland Cavs was a nice, easy win. And then UCLA, college football, nice win. So college football 2-0 this week with Northern Illinois and UCLA. And I have two college football plays today. You can go look at my analysis on the college football video from last night. But I am on Rutgers +6 and Virginia +7.5. Both decent spots where I'm playing a team coming off of a bye against a team that I think is in a bad spot. And I think I'm playing against two teams that just clinched bowl eligibility as well, if I remember correctly. I forget exactly. What did I even talk about last night? I don't know. But here I'm going to talk about college basketball. I actually don't have any plays on this college basketball slate. It's the first college basketball Saturday, and it's a card that's kind of messing with my mind. There are a few big games, so I will talk about those and maybe talk about a few leans that I might have. I have one NBA play that I actually like quite a bit. I think there's one strong NBA side here, and then NHL, I have a side as well, which is decent enough for me to be playing it, but I don't know if it's really that strong, but I like my NBA play better than my hockey play. Let's just put it that way. Let's look at college basketball here. I'm going to try to remember what I was just thinking when I ran down this card because there are so many games here. Tennessee, Louisville right off the bat at noon. One of the big games of the day, really. That's at Louisville at the KFC Yum Center, man. Colonel Sanders. Tennessee is the 12th ranked team in the country, but like I said, I hesitate to anoint Tennessee like an upper echelon team right away after they've lost like Dalton Connect to the draft and whatever. So this team it's probably not quite as good as what we've seen out of them the last few years. So I think that Tennessee, I would hold back a little bit on Tennessee here. And this line is telling you something with Louisville having flipped from a +1.5 dog to a 2.5 point favorite here with 87% of the cash on Louisville and 50% of the tickets evenly split. So that's one of those lines, man, in college basketball that was so profitable last year for a large portion of the season last year when you have a ranked road underdog up against a home unranked favorite. That home unranked favorite cashed at a ridiculous percentage last year. And you can see the market moving in that direction. Obviously, I would have rather had Louisville at the lower price, but Louisville looks like it would be the side in this one. Although I did check KenPom, and KenPom, I think, actually has Tennessee around a 1-point favorite based on his rankings and the way he simulates the games or whatever. So just an extra check, but that I would still lean to the Louisville side, though, against that. Fordham, Seton Hall. Seton Hall is coming off a game where I believe they didn't play that well as a superior opponent. Let me remember correctly. Yeah, they just barely got by St. Peter's. St. Peter's, kind of a pesky little brother in the state of New Jersey there. So I would kind of expect Seton Hall to bounce back after that and play a better game here against Fordham. Fordham, not very good, but Fordham is also coming off a fairly big game as well against St. John's, but they are playing a second straight road game. Although, they're based on New York City, so they're not really traveling very far. And it does look like the market is actually way on the Fordham side, but I would not want to be taking the points there with Fordham. Seton Hall's down from 11 to 10, 67% of tickets on them, 88% of the cash on the side of Fordham. So it does look like the market does have some strong indicators on Fordham, but like I said, I'm not really sure I agree with that because to me it looks like it's at least a spot where Seton Hall will show up focused just because they know that they weren't focused in that first game. Columbia, they're like the prime letdown spot of the day, man. They just beat Villanova on the road as a 17.5-point favorite. That's a big win for an Ivy, a team that's not really that great, an Ivy team either. Maybe they're one of the better Ivies this year. Who knows? Maybe that was just an outlier of a game, but that was a second straight road game. I think Villanova didn't take them seriously, and they went in and beat up Villanova. And they do have Lehigh up in a couple of days, which I don't know how big Lehigh is really as far as Columbia is concerned. I don't know how big that game really is, but this looks at the very least like a letdown spot. And they're up against Delaware State, who really is kind of a lower tier conference team here in Delaware State. Where in the MEAC, I think, yeah. And Delaware State actually is playing a second straight road game, and they're coming off at least a not embarrassing performance against Virginia Tech, where they lost by around what the spread was. So, I mean, that wasn't really that horrible a performance there for Delaware State. So they're playing a game off of playing a step-up game, even though they didn't do that well. So I still lean to Delaware State, but I don't think it's strong enough for me to play, even though Columbia is probably in the biggest letdown spot of the day. They're down from 12 to 11, 98% of the cash on Columbia, however, and 50% of tickets evenly split. So these morning percentages though in college basketball, I don't know if they're always like that accurate, and a lot of times you see them flip around. So I do lean to taking the points with Delaware State, but I don't think it's that strong. And I checked all these with KenPom as well, but I don't remember exactly what the KenPom check was on each one of them. Go pay for KenPom, actually. It's good. It's a good tool, even if you're not actually betting. I mean, it's whatever it is. It's only like $20 to $30 a year or something like that, so it's not a whole lot. If you want his projections and whatever, he's been at it for a long time. His models are the best that you can find in college basketball, in my opinion. So I do like to use those as at least like a gut check. What else was I got to talk about as far as these games? Morgan State just kind of caught my eye because they had lost to Mercyhurst, who's a newcomer to I was going to say FBS, to Division I. I don't even know who the hell Mercyhurst is, but that looks like a pretty bad performance there from Morgan State, a 7.5-point favorite, and they couldn't even beat this new Division I team. But now they have to go out on the road to Longwood, and Longwood tends to be one of the better Big South teams, so I don't know. Long was just coming off of kind of a tune-up game where they themselves didn't really play that well either, actually, against Randolph, whoever the hell that is. Not a Division I team. Longwood's up from 10.5 to 11.5, 50% of the tickets, evenly split, and 83% of the cash on Morgan State. So the cash percentage is on the Morgan State side after I think they had a more embarrassing performance in their first game. So I would kind of look that way to taking the points with Morgan State, but I don't know that much about what's going on here, and I don't even know what the personnel is on these teams. So, Charles, what's up, man? Thanks for catching the show early in the morning. Well, not early in the morning because it's Saturday, so it's not that early. It might be early for some of you who are not on the East Coast like I am. I'm trying to get ready for this college football day, though. I got to get my picks in my pools and stuff at the very least, but that doesn't take me that long. What else was I going to talk about? We do have a bunch of other ranked teams here, but they're not really playing in interesting games. Nichols, I know, is in a back-to-back because I talked about them yesterday, and I was right about them not covering yesterday. But they're playing the Mississippi University for Women. What? Is that a men's basketball team? This is 2024, man. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's a team of all trans people. Dude, I don't even know what's going on in that game. I don't want to know. That game's going to be on ESPN Plus, though. You can actually go watch that game if you have ESPN Plus and you want to, which I actually do. This is why I like ESPN Plus, though, by the way, just to throw it out there. You see how many games are on ESPN Plus? Almost every college basketball game, like, you can watch now. Virtually all of them. They'll either be on some like TV network or they're going to be on ESPN Plus. It's crazy how much college basketball. If you like college basketball, I mean, it's crazy how much college basketball you can get with ESPN Plus. It's wild. Yeah, that's true. It's in Mississippi. You never know though. LP Mississippi was really gay for a while. The Libertarian Party, although they changed ownership though, so I'm no longer blocked on Twitter by the Libertarian Party in Mississippi. They have a more based social media presence now and ownership there. Unlike Texas and Louisiana, who remain the most gay of the affiliates. But I don't know if people want any Libertarian Party inside baseball on a sports show, though. I'm just trying to remember like what I was thinking about some of these games when I ran down these games this morning. Memphis and UNLV. I lean to the UNLV side in this one, and the market is indicating on it. Memphis, I mean, they're coming off a nice win over an SEC team at the very least against Missouri. So Charles, you want the inside baseball? All right, well, you're like one of my only viewers. So Memphis, I mean, I consider this to be a pretty big win against an SEC team, Missouri, even though it's not exactly the best SEC team. But Missouri, I mean, they're around. I mean, they're not considered to be the worst program. And now Memphis has to go out to the Pacific time zone to UNLV. If they had a bigger game up next, I would probably be on UNLV here. I was close. This is the closest to being a play for me, by the way. It would be taking the points with UNLV here. And Ken Palm, I think, has the line right around where I think he has it right at 2, and that's right where the line is as far as the odds makers are concerned as well. So Memphis, I do think this is a weird spot for them, though, having to go out to the Pacific time zone. They're going out to a place they don't usually have to play out in Las Vegas. Memphis, I don't know if they're maybe going to have some growing pains because they have so many transfers in there. Although UNLV, I think, only has 2 returning starters as well. So both of these teams are trying to, like, gain chemistry as the season starts. But, I mean, Memphis, they could also even be distracted, man, because when you're a team like Memphis and you're playing and staying in the city of Memphis, and what do you have to do in Memphis, man? Besides, like, get shot or whatever. I mean, there's not a whole lot to do there. You go out to Las Vegas, you might fall into some distractions there if you're not paying attention to this UNLV team. So these teams that don't play there that often could get distracted by the city life, by the lights. You're playing in the evening, so that could be an added distraction there for Memphis as well. UNLV, on the other hand, they're coming off just kind of an easy win to start the season over a very weak Alabama State team, who I think is in the SWAC. And UNLV probably didn't even cover that spread in that one. Oh, they did, actually, by 1 point, winning by 14 with a 13.5 point spread. Well, there you go, UNLV. UNLV, I mean, these Mountain West teams also tend to be pretty difficult to beat in their own arenas during the regular season. They tend to be good at home, but they tend to be better at home against each other. That's been the thing the last couple of years. The Mountain West teams in the conference matchups, the Mountain West teams do really well as the home teams against each other. But we know what the whole knock on the Mountain West is. Like, once they get into the tournament, they don't do well against other conferences. So that is out there. But Memphis is not like a larger conference team at the very least. Well, where are they? In the American Athletic? I don't consider that. I mean, it's not a power conference at the very least. But I do lean to UNLV in that one for the reasons that I just said. And UNLV, yeah, let me bring up the code here. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I just brought up the source by accident here. UNLV has actually gone from a 2-point favorite to a 2-point dog to a pick 'em. They're flipping to a favorite right now, and literally like 10 minutes ago, this was +2 on UNLV, and now I should have taken it at +2, man. Now it's flipping to UNLV being the favorite. 64% of the tickets and 99% of the cash on UNLV. I guess I should have taken it. Yeah, FBI code. That's me. You know me. I'm a Fed. Yep. So that, yeah, I mean, I missed the boat on that. UNLV was +2 seconds ago, man. And now they're flipping to a favorite here as the market really is adjusting. Looks like pretty strong market indicators on UNLV and on Louisville, by the way. But again, yeah, I'm just staying off it. Providence, I like in this game today, by the way. They're coming off that aforementioned game where they barely got by Central Connecticut and didn't even beat them by that much. And now they're facing Stonehill, they're playing 2 Northeastern Conference teams in a row here. Stonehill, I think, was new to the Northeastern Conference last year. They moved up to FBI. I keep saying FBS. They moved up to Division I college basketball last year. Stonehill, the guys from Easton, Massachusetts, I think is where Stonehill is. They're in my neck of the woods up here. Not a very good team, though. Providence, I mean, after that close call against a way inferior Central Connecticut team, even though I know Central Connecticut was one of the better teams in the NEC last year. They're still not good. Providence should be in a refocus spot here. They don't have anything upcoming, so they're probably going to get scared into focus a little bit by that last game. And Stonehill, I mean, they're just not a very good team, man. I don't know what else to tell you. They're coming off a game against Notre Dame where they actually, I don't know. I don't want to say they played well in that game, but I don't know. I mean, they didn't get at least completely embarrassed in that game, I guess. But second straight road game for them now after at least trying to play a step-up game against Notre Dame. Good luck to Stonehill in this one would be my opinion. Providence is down, though, from 25 to 24 with juice. I don't really see the percentages on that, but I lean to Providence in that one, laying the points. Plus, it doesn't look that easy to lay the points with Providence after what they did in that first game, right? So, what else do we have going on here? Baylor and Arkansas is a ranked matchup. Number 8 against number 16. This is one of the 2 actual ranked matchups in college basketball today. Baylor, I kind of lean to the Baylor side just because of what they did in their first game. They went out to Gonzaga. I mean, it's not easy to go out to Spokane, Washington, man, when you're a team that's not used to going out there and traveling to the Pacific time zone. But I didn't really expect this, but Gonzaga completely wiped them out. And Gonzaga is a very good team. They're better than Baylor is, but man, that was a massacre for Baylor. That's a totally embarrassing loss, even though I know it's a step-up game against a big team like that, but that's probably going to have Baylor in bounce-back mode after that. Nobody wants to get embarrassed to that degree and give up 100 points, even though we know Gonzaga is a team that has really good offensive play the last few years, especially 2 years ago. I think they had one of the historically good offenses in college basketball. Baylor, I expect them to kind of bounce back in this game, and they're back at home. It's their home opener. I expect a better performance this time. But Arkansas, I mean, they're coming off kind of an easy win basically over Lipscomb, where they probably didn't have their full focus against Lipscomb. So Arkansas isn't really in a bad spot either. But my lean would be to Baylor just because of the embarrassment factor. Baylor is up from 2 to 4 on the road. So kind of in line with what the rankings are. So the odds makers are telling you the rankings are actually correct, at least in that Baylor is the better team over Arkansas. But I think everybody knows that. I mean, when it's basketball and it's Baylor, pretty much everybody knows Baylor is a pretty good basketball program and typically better than Arkansas's. 89% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on Baylor. So it looks like Baylor is one of those sides that is public and pros actually agreeing on the Baylor side, and it's driven the number up from 2 to 4. So, I mean, my lean would be the Baylor side in there, but obviously laying -2 is way, way better than laying -4. So, early college basketball, man, with these ridiculous, crazy line moves. It's just one of those slates I don't really want to get involved in at all, but I am running down a bunch of games for you at the very least, because it's college basketball mayhem, just to give you some opinions here. And at least the NBA card is small today. Chicago State, I think they're in a bad spot. Actually, ooh boy, I might play this one because I didn't see that this is also a sandwich spot for Chicago State. I think I'm actually going to maybe play Youngstown in this one. Let me look this over. I might do it. Chicago State, they were a 21.5-point underdog against Loyola Chicago. We all know Loyola, Sister Jean. I think she's still alive, right? Loyola, I mean, they've made a name for themselves in college basketball over the last several years because they had a couple of really good seasons, had that ridiculous Final Four run. They've been in the tournament multiple times. They were a big favorite in this one. Chicago State, they're a little brother to all the other Chicago area teams basically. Chicago State, they stepped their game up in this game, man, and they played a close game, even though they were losing by a little bit of a margin for the majority of the second half here. They kind of stayed in it and didn't go away, and they were still within 5, in the final minute. So Chicago State played a pretty decent game against Loyola Chicago and covered by a lot in that game at the very least. That's a big step-up game for Chicago State, and they fell just short. Now Chicago State gets Youngstown State coming into their house, and up next, 3 days from now, they have to go on the road and face Texas, which, when you're Chicago State, when do you ever face a big team like Texas? And for some reason, Chicago State actually recently, in recent years, has had a habit of actually playing well against bigger conference teams, especially against Northwestern, because Northwestern is, again, another one of their big brothers in Chicago. So Chicago State tends to really step up their game against Northwestern specifically, but also against other big conference teams. So they may actually be looking ahead to this Texas game and thinking about that. So this looks like a sandwich spot, even though it is also their home opener. I mean, how do you get back up off the mat after you play this? You put in a really good performance against Loyola Chicago, and then you got Texas up next, like I said. Youngstown, though, I don't know if I want to play this because Youngstown hasn't played a game yet. They're supposed to play against whoever the hell this is. Westminster, Pennsylvania. I think that's Westminster, Pennsylvania would be my guess there because Youngstown is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I don't know who that is. I don't know why that game was postponed, but because of that, Youngstown has not played a game yet, and they do have Ohio State up in 2 days. So, all right, maybe I won't play this game, but it looks like a bad spot it looks like a really bad spot for Chicago State, and not the greatest spot for Youngstown, unfortunately, because if Youngstown was in a little bit of a better spot, I'd probably be playing them. But at least Chicago State, for them, at least they do have a game under their belt. And when you're like Youngstown, you haven't played yet this season, you kind of have to you have a little bit of an adjustment period to get used to playing. So I will stay off it just because I think there is an advantage to having played a game already at the very least. And like I said, it could be a look ahead for both teams in that one. So the over actually might make sense in that game. College basketball overs, I mean, good luck. I don't really... it's like the least likely that I'm going to be on a total in college basketball, but Youngstown, Youngstown is a 5.5-point favorite as well. Let me see. What was I looking at there? Shit. Youngstown, 5.5-point favorite, 67% of the tickets, 86% of the cash. So it does look like the cash is on the Youngstown State side to some extent, at least according to the percentages right now. And the total is up from 147, juice to the over to 151.5. I think because both teams are not in a good spot, so you may expect the defenses to maybe not totally show up in this one. But Youngstown, when it is their first game, their defense may be a little bit less affected just because they're at least rested because they haven't played a game yet. So that's how I look at those games. What else is happening here in college basketball? I'm almost through the card here. We're almost at the end, baby. Auburn-Houston is the other one of the actual ranked matchups here. I mean, this is kind of an interesting one, I guess. Auburn, they're coming off absolutely smashing Vermont, which Vermont isn't that bad a team, man. I mean, they're basically the best team in the American East every single year, and they're good enough that they're usually like a top 70 or so team. I don't know if they are this year. I haven't really looked at KenPom for that, but so that win is actually pretty impressive for Auburn. Auburn, I think maybe they took out their frustrations. I don't know how many returning starters they have from last year, but last year they were a top team last year, and they were a team that maybe posed a threat to UConn in their region of the tournament there, and Auburn got upset by Yale in the first round and early exited, so they probably came into the season a little pissed after that, and they took out their frustrations on Vermont. Now they got Houston. This is a very interesting game, man, because this is, even though it's number 11 versus number 2, or excuse me, number 11 versus number 4, KenPom has Houston ranked number 1 in his rankings and Auburn ranked number 2. So this is crazy that this is actually the number 1 against number 2 in KenPom's rankings. So you might be looking at a game this early in the season that's between the top 2 teams in college basketball, at least as KenPom has this right now. This game is the Mattress Firm Battleground, a 2024 tournament. So that's the other thing. You have to pay attention to where these games are located because there are a lot of these preseason or early season tournaments happening. This is one that's actually semi-home for Houston because this is at the Toyota Center in Houston. So I think this is where the Houston Rockets play. So it's in an NBA stadium, but it is still in Houston. So Houston still does basically have the home advantage, except that it's not really their home arena. It's at the Houston Rockets stadium here. So just pointing that out. And Houston, what did they do in their first game? Have they played yet? Yeah, they played Jackson State, excuse me, yeah. Which, by the way, I think Jackson State, that's where Deion Sanders coached in football before he went to Colorado, right? I think. But this is not football. This is basketball. Houston annihilated Jackson State. I mean, no surprise there. Houston is one of the best teams in college basketball yet again. I mean, this Houston program is insanely good. I mean, I don't know what else you could say about that. And now they're hosting Auburn. And both of these teams, I think, are actually a little bit underrated coming into the season here. Houston is so good, though, that they're up from -2.5 to -5, even though, like I said, we're looking at KenPom's number 2 and number 1 teams. I think he has this game a little bit closer. I think he has Houston like around maybe a 3-point favorite because you do have to add the home semi-home court to it at the very least. But Houston's up from 2.5 to 5 now, going through the 5. 81% of the tickets on Houston. Houston's going to get the public action because the public knows how good Houston is at this point, and they didn't like the way Auburn exited last year, so the public is probably giving Auburn a little bit less credit than they deserve. And 85% of the cash on the Houston side. But this is going to be one of the best college basketball games of the early season, in my opinion, man. This is a good game. Mattress Firm, yeah, there's a lot of money laundering there. How do I keep up with these? I mean, I don't exactly, but I couldn't tell you who a lot of the players are in these teams, Charles, but I look at like scheduling spots, situations, and rankings and stuff, so that's how I do college basketball, and you will find me, as you've seen already, on some lower conference teams. Prime time. So my lean would be with the market to Houston, but obviously you've missed the boat on that one too. These lines are just moving so extremely, man. It's like, what can you even do? But it looks like Houston is probably the correct side, but it's moved up too much for my liking. And then I will point out UC San Diego is coming off a big game where they almost were able to beat their bigger brother, San Diego State, on the road. So that's a big game for UC San Diego, man. UC San Diego is fairly new to FBS, or why do I keep saying FBS? To Division I. They're in the Big West, and UC San Diego almost won the Big West last year, I think, but they weren't eligible to be in the tournament yet, I think, or weren't eligible to win because they are in that transition period right now. But UC San Diego, they've been a pretty good team since they've been in Division I. And they played well against San Diego State here, man. San Diego State, this isn't football. Yet again, I say San Diego State's basketball program is a lot better than their football program is right now. And this is a good game played by UC San Diego here. They played pretty close. They didn't go away. They were winning in the second half, and it was a close, low-scoring game, defensive, physical battle, which is more San Diego State style because UC San Diego actually likes to run. They play a faster tempo. So this game was in San Diego State's preferred tempo, like a slower, physical, grinding game. And they ground UC San Diego down. But UC San Diego still played well in that slow tempo game, even though it's not their style. Now they're coming off that, and they have to play Pepperdine. But it is UC San Diego's home opener. But it is definitely a huge step down in class after playing San Diego State. But they could be so physically beat up and coming off almost pulling off a big upset there against San Diego State that they could be a little bit hungover coming into this game. San Diego State was favored by 10.5 in that game. So I slightly lean to the Pepperdine side in this, or maybe more than slightly. Pepperdine's coming off a nice win to open the season against Western Illinois. But as I pointed out the other night, Western Illinois was in a bad spot coming into that game because they were coming off of beating San Jose State in a nice big road upset to start the season there for Western Illinois. I lean to Pepperdine in this one. UC San Diego's up from 8.5 to 9. I think Ken Baum actually has this number at around 7. So it does look like you are getting some line value if you like Pepperdine in this one. And like I said, I do. Man, my college basketball videos get so long. I'm going to talk about college basketball for a half hour. But that might be it. I mean, I might call it a day with college basketball. But I have not played any of these games. But I just ran down a huge amount of this card here for you. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this throughout the season, and maybe it might become my Friday night thing, like I said, because college football, we only have a couple more weeks left, and one of them is the rivalry week, which is a shorter card and whatever. So we really only have one full college football week left. So after that, maybe I'll start doing college basketball for Saturday's card on Friday nights. Let's get into my plays that I have here in NBA and NHL. I'll go to NHL first just because it's less interesting to me. And we have a big NHL card, but really not a whole lot stuck out to me in this NHL card today. I mean, I will point out Nashville. This is one of the games that did stick out to me a little bit, but I'm not playing it. But Nashville is returning home from a 2-game trip. They didn't go far, though. Washington, Florida. So not like a typical return home spot where you might be distracted, but they are playing a 3rd game in 4 days, all in different cities, and they're playing a 4th game in 6 days and a 5th game in, 8 days. So they've had a jammed schedule recently. So Nashville, not in a very good rest spot here up against Utah. And they play this one home game before they have to go out on the road to face Colorado and Edmonton, who, even though Colorado hasn't put up a good record so far this year, they have a lot of injuries now, which is one thing I forgot to point out when I was talking about Colorado. When I have talked about Colorado and how good I think they actually are, Colorado's been dealing with a lot of injuries. But still, that's a big game up next. So Nashville, I think they're in a spot where they could overlook Utah here, even though Utah does have a better record than they do right now. Utah just got a win after they lost a couple of games to some good teams, Vegas and Winnipeg. They closed out they didn't close out. They're finishing their road trip right now. So they won against St. Louis. And I think they're going to want to even up their road trip here and go 2-2 on the road trip, man. So I do think a little bit more of a motivating factor there for Utah. They've had a little bit extra rest in there because they did have a day off in between Winnipeg and St. Louis there and multiple days off between Vegas and Winnipeg. So Utah has the better rest situation here. And like I said, I don't think they're going to really be looking ahead to Carolina and Vegas just because I think they want to split the road trip here. And that win might help propel them into this game. So I lean to the Utah side in that one. It's not a play for me, obviously. Nashville's down from -155 to -149. 89% of the tickets, 95% of the cash. But I don't know about that cash percentage because the line has moved against Nashville a little bit. So just one thing I was going to point out in there, in the hockey card there. And the other thing I'll point out, even though I don't really have any read on this Boston-Ottawa game at all, but this is the goalie battle, dude. This is going to be Ullmark, I believe, is going to be starting for Ottawa here. Former Bruin, who they just got rid of to start this season. Ullmark, he's slated to start, I'm pretty sure, in this game because he didn't start in the previous game for Ottawa. So this is going to be Ullmark up against the former team of his, the Boston Bruins, up against the guy that the Bruins decided to keep over him, Swayman. So Ullmark might be a little bit extra angry and may have a little bit of extra focus in this game at the very least. But, of course, this is hockey, so it's not all on the goalie. So who knows what's going to happen in this game. But the Ottawa might rally a little bit around Ullmark just if he's a little bit pissed at Boston. I really don't like how the season has been going for Boston so far. I mean, this line has dropped quite a bit from -155 to -135 on Boston. 82% of the tickets, 95% of the cash. So Boston is public. It doesn't look like they have a significant cash percentage on them right now, but the line has also moved in the direction of Ottawa fairly significantly. So conflicting market indicators there. No thanks for me. I'm not going to play it. The one game I'm going to play, I almost looked to maybe play an over in this one, but I settled on playing the side. Calgary Flames plus 125 is going to be the one play that I have in hockey. Buffalo's up from -135 to -144 here. Who really is Buffalo to be laying prices like this, though? I don't know. I mean, they're mediocre, I would say, although Calgary is also mediocre. 65% of the tickets on Buffalo, 59% of the cash on the other side on Calgary. So we do look like we have the market split there that I like to look for. This is an afternoon game at 1 p.m., this is the only afternoon game. So this is gonna be played during college football. So we're gonna have some afternoon action today with I think at least a couple of my plays. I think one of my college plays, Rutgers, I think is afternoon as well at noon. So we're gonna have some action going on right away today. But yeah, it's the ticket cash disparity that I like to look for. It does look like the line is moving up on the over as well, which is also my lean on the total here. It's gone up from 6 with juice on the over to 6 with more juice on the over. It looks like it's headed towards 6.5. So you could probably still find a 6 -120 on the over if you do like the over here. 81% of the tickets, 98% of the cash on the over. But I am preferring the side in this one. I don't want to lay the extra price on the over, but looking at the goaltender tandem, it's not one that really seems to be as conducive to the over, but the situation does seem to be conducive to the over. I don't really think there's going to be really intense defense in this game because Calgary's playing a third straight road game. They did have a day off in between each one, though, so they've had at least one day of rest between each game. They are coming off 2 overtime games, but in the first game, they almost lost to Montreal, who's one of the worst teams in hockey, and then in the second game, they almost beat the Bruins, but the Bruins not looking like that top-tier team, man. They're looking like a middling team this year, so I don't know if that's going to really cause Calgary to be hungover coming into this. And they're sitting at 1-1 on the road trip, and this is their last game of the road trip. So I think that actually might focus Calgary because teams, they don't want to lose. They don't want to have a losing road trip, man. This is the rubber match in their road trip. They want to get this game and have a winning road trip. So I think that's a little bit of extra motivation for Calgary there. Whereas Buffalo, I think, is in the worst spot. So even though Calgary, I think their rest spot isn't that great. So that's why I was looking at maybe the over makes sense here. And Calgary, by the way, it's going to be Vladar in net if you care about those things. They've been alternating between Vladar and Wolf. They're both okay goalies. I mean, I don't think there's much of a difference between the two, in my opinion. Vladar, in his one game that he played against Buffalo last year, though the game did go over, it was a 4-3 game. So I don't know that there's that much you can take away from that. In Buffalo, they're going to have Luukkonen in net again, at least according to the starting goalies thing that I look at, because it looks like he plays, at least the last time he played a bunch of games in a row, he played 4 games in a row, but maybe it's because they had rest in between Detroit and Ottawa here. They had a couple of days rest, but I don't know. It looks like Luukkonen was at least the projected starter, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is Levi in this one, because Luukkonen played a few games in a row, but I know Luukkonen did have one good game when he played against Calgary last year, and that was a game that did not go over. Calgary, I think, got shut out in the game, so something to just keep in mind as far as if you're playing the over. But Luukkonen is the better of these two goalies, so for fading Buffalo, I'd prefer if it's Levi in net, but I'm doing it regardless of who the goalie is going to be, because you're either going to get Levi, who's the worst of the two goalies, or you're going to get Luukkonen, who might be a little tired now if he's playing his 4th game in a row. So either way, I think it's a decent spot to fade Buffalo. And the main contributing factor here is, I mean, look at what they're coming off of. They just beat the New York Rangers 6-1 on the road at Madison Square Garden. I mean, that's like a prime classic letdown spot, dude. When you're a mediocre team like Buffalo is, and you go into MSG, into like an arena filled with Chinese salt there, Chinese seasoning. I mean, that is just crazy, dude. They beat the New York Rangers 6-1. The team that won the President's Trophy last year, still one of the top teams in hockey. And Shesterkin was in net for the Rangers in that game, and he didn't do well, and they pulled him and put Quick in, and Quick didn't do that well either. But I don't know, were the Rangers in a bad spot coming into that game? I mean, not really. I mean, they just beaten the Islanders. Who really cares? So very strange outcome in that game with the Sabres blowing away the Rangers. So I think the Sabres are going to be in a big letdown spot. And this is really just, they were getting pucks by the goalie here in this one. Shesterkin just was not focused and not playing well, it looks like. Once they got into the second period, just a lot of goals got through for the Sabres. And if you look at the stats in this game, Rangers outshot Buffalo. They outhit Buffalo massively. So the Rangers were a way more physical team. So Buffalo might be a little bit beat up coming into this game too. And Buffalo did win the face-off percentage by a little bit. So it looks like they had a little bit of the extra possession in the game, not by much. But as far as the shots were concerned, yeah, I mean, a lot of it maybe because the Rangers were way behind. So they were playing catch-up and maybe firing desperation shots. But even so, that physicality factor there with the hits, it looks like the Rangers were the way more physical team. So I think that game was not really a game that looked like Buffalo would have won it by that much. It looked like a game where it should have been maybe a little bit closer at the very least. I think Buffalo's in a letdown spot after that, man. And they are returning home, although they're only returning home from New York to Buffalo. But still, they're back home as well off of that win, and maybe they're like now listening to like the home media out there in Buffalo praising them for that huge win. It makes it an even a little bit bigger win because it's their like in-state rival and in-state bigger brother, and they went in and embarrassed the Rangers in their arena. So I like Calgary in that one, plus 125. That's the one hockey play. Boo New York is correct, Charles. Not a fan of New York. I don't hate the Rangers, though. And Chris Kreider is a Massachusetts boy, man. He's from the North Shore of Massachusetts. So I like Kreider, actually. And I actually, in my first job, I worked with a guy who was an older dude. I used to talk to this dude about sports all the time. Shout out to Paul. Paul was his name. This dude, one of my coworkers, I believe his son, who was also a hockey player, but did not wind up getting to the NHL or anything like that, but I think may have played at University of West Virginia, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure, but in high school, his son played hockey with Chris Kreider. So my coworker at my first job there, who I used to talk sports with all the time, knew Chris Kreider, and Chris Kreider was like his son's best friend. So that's kind of a cool tie in there, although I've never met Kreider myself, but my coworker like knows him. So it's kind of cool that Kreider wound up being like a star NHL player. But I'm going against Buffalo in this one. So this game doesn't even have the Rangers playing in it. The Rangers are playing probably in kind of a bounce back spot for the Rangers. I haven't really looked at that game, but they're playing against, who are they playing today? I don't even know. They're at Detroit, so it's not really the easiest place to go for the Rangers either, but maybe a bounce back spot for the Rangers. Yeah, he might be. The North Shore up there, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a white trash area, a lot of places in the North Shore, so maybe there's a little bit of racism up there. I don't know. Let's get to the NBA, where the NBA play that I have, I like this play a little bit better, and then I will call it a day on this video. Not a horribly long video, despite all the college basketball talk. It's a short NBA slate, and one game that I was looking at is not a game that I'm involved in, but Nets Cavs. This game looks like it's a bad spot for both teams, and we see the total. The total is what you might want to look at with Nets Cavs. It's dropped from 222.5 to 221.5, and it's going a little bit under that now, juiced to the under. 73% of tickets on the over, because the public sees the Cavs being this undefeated team, man, and the public wants to come in and play overs if they're going to play totals in Cavs games. But 56% of the cash is actually on the under. And I think when you have a game like this where both teams are coming off big games, they're both in a back-to-back like this, well, it can go both ways, which is why I don't want to play a total here. But when teams are coming off big games, yeah, that might mean that their defense is a little bit less focused. So that would mean the over might be worth a look. But these teams are both in back-to-backs, and they both, I think, had more focus on last night's game. So when that's the case, you might see some of their starters get rested, because this is the NBA, man. You know how often starters get rested. It's the Greg Popovich phenomenon. So that's the thing about this game, and that might be why the total is dropping a little bit as well, because these teams, yes, they both played yesterday, and yes, that means their defense might not be rested coming into this game, but it also means the teams might rest some of their starters in this game, because this game means less, especially to the Cleveland Cavaliers, though. This game means less than it would to the Nets, but you're not going to find me on the Nets either, even though the Cavs look like they have 70% of the tickets and 53% of the cash on the other side on the Nets. So the market indicators, the cash percentage, does make this look like a pros versus Joes kind of situation, with the cash being on the side of the Nets, but the Cavs up from 11 to 13. Maybe there's a little bit of value in the number, at least, because the number is going to have to be skewed to accommodate for how well Cleveland has been playing recently. But Brooklyn, I mean, they're coming off a really big game themselves. So this is the type of spot where I got mad that these teams were playing each other, because both of these teams played last night. And looking at what they did last night, I was like, this is a fade spot for both teams. I mean, look what Brooklyn did last night. They went into the Celtics. They went into the Boston Garden, the TD Garden, the Titty Garden. By the way, there are guys that sell like semi-offensive Boston merch outside of the Boston sports venues, and Titty Garden is one of the shirts that's being sold there outside of Celtics games and Bruins games. Celtics, I think the Celtics were in a bad spot in this game, though, because they were coming off that big game against the Warriors where they came back and took the lead but still wound up losing to the Warriors. So I think the Celtics really just didn't show up focused for this Brooklyn game after that big Warriors game. I think it was a hangover spot, and the Celtics almost got caught in this game. They were losing for actually a large portion of it, the entire first half and into the second half. They were losing for like 3/4 of the game, and then the Celtics were able to overcome the Nets, because the Celtics are the significantly better team, so they were able to still just get it done. It was a 13.5-point favorite. They obviously did not come close to covering. Wire-to-wire Brooklyn cover, but if you're Brooklyn, how do you bounce back off the mat after that? The one thing that Brooklyn does have going for them at the very least is that before having to play last night, they did have a bunch of days off. They had 3 days off between Memphis and Boston. So Brooklyn was also really rested coming into that Boston game. So I should have played Brooklyn in that game. That was one that I overlooked last night. That was a spot where Brooklyn was rested up against a less rested, hungover Celtics team. So that was a good spot for the Brooklyn Nets in that one. So Brooklyn, and even coming into this game, I think Brooklyn is in the slightly less bad spot because they had so much rest coming into that Boston game. But still, when you almost beat the returning champs on their own floor like that as a huge underdog, and you are winning, and it looks like you're going to be able to win the game, and then you like just lose right at the end like that with Brooklyn, that's not a good spot when you have to turn around, get right back off the mat and play again. So like I said, it's very unfortunate they're playing Cleveland here and not some other team, because Cleveland, they played last night. They're playing 3 games in 4 days, so I can't really play Cleveland in this game, of course. I actually think Cleveland is in the worst spot because They're less rested. They're playing 3 games in 4 days, playing a back-to-back, and they're in like plump and gay mode, man, I think for sure. Because look what they just did last night. It was a bad spot for Golden State, in my opinion. I was on Cleveland last night. That was one of my wins last night. Cleveland blew out the Golden State Warriors, man. Golden State was coming off beating the Boston Celtics at TD Garden. So Golden State, I thought they were in kind of a letdown spot there, having beaten the returning champs. That's a huge win on their own floor. Even though it is an undefeated Cleveland team, I thought Golden State wouldn't be able to like continue that max effort for as long. And I think this Golden State team isn't as good as their record looks probably so far, because they are a team with aging superstars. They've lost Klay Thompson. Curry is old. So I don't think this Golden State team is that like peak Golden State team that we saw even up to like a couple of years ago. Cleveland handled them, but now because that is still Golden State and it is still Steph Curry, Cleveland could be in like real fat and gay mode here, plump and gay or whatever, fat and sassy. On the back-to-back coming into this, and they might not take Brooklyn totally seriously, even though Brooklyn did play against the Celtics pretty well last night, like I said. So not a play for me, but an interesting game because both teams are in fade spots, and unfortunately they're playing each other. But we do have another team that's in a fade spot, and I'm fading them, and I'm playing the Toronto Raptors +8. This line is all over the place, dude. I will just point that out. I found a +8 on FanDuel in Massachusetts. The line, looking across all the books, this line was anywhere between 6 and 8. So I saw 6, 6.5. That was the majority of what I saw. And I saw 7, 7.5 at a couple of spots. And I saw an 8 out there. So I would say if you can get 7.5 or 8, obviously do it. That's the way that you want to play this. But I don't mind playing a lesser number on this as well, because I like the Raptors side in this one quite a bit. This is against the LA Clippers. The Clippers are down from 7.5 to 6. So we see some significant reverse line movement going towards the Raptors. 74% of the tickets on Clippers, 85% of the cash on the other side on the Raptors. So this looks like a pros versus Joes scenario here as well, between the Clippers and Raptors here. Like I said, get the best number that you can if you're going to play the Raptors here. I'm not sure that I wouldn't still do it at 6, to be honest, but obviously 7.5 or better is what you really want. I was surprised that I saw a stray 8 at FanDuel. I was like, thank you, FanDuel, and now you're going to ban me for your own fault. It's your own fault that you have a better number for the Raptors players out there, but you're going to blame me for it and ban me because you don't want winning bettors at your you don't want winning bettors at your sports book, even though I think books should cater to the winning bettors, because the winning bettors give them information, man, because the winning bettors are a large minority of their players, so they're still going to win a ton of money off of the public. So the winning bettors, I think it's worth winning slightly less for the books to get that information, because they get information every time the winning bettors come in and bet. The bettors are telling them something and giving them information. So I think it is worth having them. And some of the books that do cater to the professionals are doing it for that reason, and they know. And it's just considered to be like courtesy, basically, in the industry. Because, sports betting, there's a lot of etiquette in that industry, right? But there is, actually, even though it's that, mafia etiquette there. It's omerta. You can't go against the family. Plump and gay, yeah, that should be we should tell Top about that. That should be his Better Off Dead merch that he has there. Everyone at your work who bets they lose. They should listen to Better Off Dead, man. Send them to me, and maybe I'll give them some good tips. I'll give them just the tip. This show, you get everything, man. You get full penetration on this show, man. You get more than just the tip on this one. We're going all in on this show. But yes, I like the Toronto Raptors. Even if you played a +6, I like it. But in basketball, 7 is the key number, because that's the 3-score threshold, right? Because it's 2 3-pointers plus an additional point. So when teams are down 7 very late in the game, that tends to be when they stop intentionally fouling. But let's look at the situation here. Why do I like the Toronto Raptors, who I keep saying are the worst team in the NBA, and maybe they still are? But Toronto, they're trying to salvage something out of this road trip, man. They've started the road trip. They've lost 2 games on the road trip, and now they've had 2 days off, and they're already out on the Pacific Coast. So they were in Sacramento, so the travel spot isn't that bad. They have multiple days rest, and they're already in California. So I think that's going to help them out a little bit, the fact they have a little bit of extra rest here. And having that extra day off might help bust this losing momentum. But they're coming off an ugly loss to Sacramento, But look at what happened in that game, though. They were coming off a game against Denver where they played Denver to within 2. Toronto has actually played Denver to within 2 both times that they played them this year. This time it was in Denver in high elevation, and Toronto put up a full effort in that game and played Denver real close in that game. So coming out of high elevation, they were in a bad spot against Sacramento, and they had just beaten Sacramento the game before that in Toronto. So Sacramento, I think, did not take Toronto lightly because Toronto had just beaten them. So I think Sacramento showed up focused in that game for that reason, because well, we're not going to let that happen again. And Toronto got smacked by Sacramento the second time there. So that's the explanation for why Toronto lost that game so badly, other than the fact that Toronto's just not good. But this is a spot where I think Toronto's going to bounce back from it, man. I think they're going to be focused. They're trying to win a game on this road trip. They're playing a team that was in the playoffs last year. So I think Toronto's going to show up for this one off an ugly loss and playing a team that does have some star power in the LA Clippers. Clippers look like they're starting to kind of adjust and turn it around. They've won 3 games in a row, but San Antonio and Philadelphia, who just have massive injuries and suspensions right now, that's a shell. It's Philadelphia. So those 2 wins, not very impressive, but they did beat Sacramento, who is a pretty good team. But look at what's going on here, man. The Clippers went to Sacramento last night. They had to go up to Sacramento. So the Clippers are actually in the worst travel spot because both teams are actually coming in to this game from Sacramento. But Toronto's had 2 days off, and the Clippers have had no days off, even though, you're only going, from north back to south in California. But still, the Clippers had to go up to Sacramento, and they beat Sacramento. So now you have another situation that's lining up where the public's going to come in and do that transitive handicapping. They were going to look at this and say, wait a minute. Both teams just played Sacramento in their last game. They both just played the same opponent. The Clippers, and they both played in Sacramento. The Clippers went up to Sacramento and beat them, whereas Toronto got absolutely beaten by that same Sacramento team up in Sacramento. So we're going to lay the points with the Clippers, right? And this line doesn't even look high. It's down to 6. What gives? It looks way too easy to lay the points with the Clippers in this game, man. The public is going to want nothing to do with Toronto, who's obviously the worst team. And I don't know if there are injuries to be aware of here with the fact that this line is dropped like this. Except, Kawhi Leonard, that doesn't matter. He's been out for the entire season so far. So that's not going to be something I'm going to factor into the situation here, because this Clippers team, that's been factored in the entire season so far. So no change with Kawhi Leonard continuing to be out. And once he comes back, there may be a reverse injured player theory situation to fade the Clippers once he does come back. But so no injury that's affecting the line, no recent injury that's going to be a change here. So give me the Raptors plus the points in this one, man. And the Clippers, it's also a look-ahead spot. So they're playing in a back-to-back. They're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, although all in the state of California, at least, in a 4th game in 6 days, and a 5th game in 8. So you don't see that as much in basketball. You see it more in hockey and stuff. So this is a very jammed schedule for the Clippers. So Toronto has the rest advantage here. Clippers just did beat a playoff team from last year in Sacramento. And who do they have next? Oh, yeah. They have the team that is probably the best team in the Western Conference, Oklahoma City, up next with this one home game in between them against a pretty awful Toronto Raptors team. I don't think the Clippers are going to take Toronto seriously, man, for all those reasons. I like it. Give me the Toronto Raptors plus 8 in that one, and that's going to do it for me, man. So the plays I have today, college football, you can go watch my college football video to see the analysis. You still got an hour and a half. The video, I think, was shorter than that this time, even though I talked about a lot of games. Rutgers plus 6 and Virginia plus 7.5 are my 2 remaining college football plays of the week out of the 4. Already 2-0. My college football has been good this year, man. 2 midweek games this time, or 1 Wednesday, 1 Friday, I think is what it was. NBA, I got Toronto Raptors plus 8, and NHL, I got Calgary Flames plus 125. So those are my plays today. A lot of my Saturdays wind up being more jam-packed than this one is, but we're being very selective here. So that's going to do it, man. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate you being in the chat, man. You've been the only one. You're the only one posting in the chat here. You're the only viewer right now, too, as we're down to 1 viewer. Nobody comes in and watches my morning show for an hour, man. But that's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad, of course. Go follow the Tower Gang Podcast, the most offensive comedy podcast that you'll ever find. Patreon.com/Tower Gang to throw some support. and you get live pre-show, live post-show, bonus content. You get to hang out with us in a Telegram, submit to the mailbag, and I think that's it. That's going to do it. You are one of the biggest fans of the show, man. You are a super fan. It's you and why don't I remember the guy's name? Will, I think, is the guy who's commenting on every single one of my videos going all the way back. So it's you two are the big two fans there. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Charles, especially for hanging out here, man. That's going to do it. Have a good Saturday. And Nate is, yeah, I'll mention Nate as well. Nate is probably the biggest live viewer that I have. He's in every live show. He said he's not in it in the mornings because it's too early for him out on the Pacific Coast or whatever. But Nate is in all of my night football shows at the very least. And he'll be back tonight. I will be back tonight with the NFL show. I got 3 NFL plays, and I like all of them. I think there are 3 plays that are by far the strongest on the board. I think they're all strong. I like them. So I'm liking how the NFL is shaping up for tomorrow. So I'll be back with that tonight. Have a good one, everybody. Let's have a good Saturday. Let's get some wins. Peace out.